Parshas Korach, Tavshin Ayin Daled. I was just speaking to the Olam over here that the foremost thing on everybody's mind this week, of course, is the situation that is going on in Eretz Yisrael. Unbelievably tragic situation where those three students, those three young boys, are still missing, and they've been taken somewhere no good, and they're still looking for them. So I was just thinking, one of the things we could do is at least to say that tonight's shiur should be a S.S.S. for these three boys, that first of all they should be found, and they should be found in good health, and be found very quickly, and be able to return to their families. The entire Eretz Yisrael, the entire Klal Yisrael is wrapped up in this right now, and we are very, very much together with our brothers in Eretz Yisrael, hoping and praying that this will end on a good note very soon. So Parshas Korach. And Parshas Korach, the last few years, we've discussed a few different aspects of Korach, but the emphasis was put on the inyan of machlokes, and how bad machlokes is, how terrible it is to the people involved, to the people that join, to the people that cause machlokes, the people that are involved in the machlokes. And today we're just going to go off a little bit on a different angle, just to change up a little bit what we were doing the past couple of years. But we're going to tie it all up, and it's going to be one inyan, really, with what we've done the past few years. Nesivos Shalom brings down a Be'er Avram, who speaks about the Medrash Tanchuma that's brought down at the beginning of this week's Parsha in Rashi. The Medrash says that what did Korach do? We all know, very famous. Korach went and he donned, along with his entire group, he donned talisos shekulan techeles. Korach they put on a talis which was totally made out of techeles. We know the Parsha of Krishma, we learned at the end of last week's Parsha, the third Parsha of Krishma, Parshas S.S.S, and it says about techeles, hakanaf psil techeles, and Korach, they put on a talis that was totally techeles, and they stood before Moshe Rabbeinu, and they asked the Shaila, are these talisos, are they mechuyev to have tzitzis or not? Is a talis shekulon techeles mechuyev b'tzitzis or not? And Korach, we know, just to explain a little bit about Korach, we know something about Korach. Korach was an extremely, don't think that we're talking about someone who was uneducated and somehow went off the derech. That wasn't Korach. Korach was at an extremely high level of avodas Hashem. Korach was from the people who carried the Aron. Korach says in the Nesivos Shalom, served the Kadosh Baruch Hu with midas haroinimus. He was on an extremely exalted level. But Korach, says in the Nesivos Shalom, was missing one very, very important thing and ingredient. And that's something known as hachnoah v'shiflos. Korach was missing that ingredient that is so necessary for a yid and a person to succeed, and that is the ingredient of being humble, of considering yourself low, not considering yourself to be on high. And Korach made a mistake by thinking that he could serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu just with midas haroinimus, way up there, high, on a very, very high level. And he thought he could do it without anivas. He thought he could do it without, okay, you're big, but let's hold yourself a little bit lower over here. And Nesivos Shalom says this is alluded to by the techeles. Techeles shows a very high level. So the techeles is, he wanted to know, can you have a talis shekulei techeles? It only does one thing. The high level serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu midas haroinimus. But hachna, considering yourself not big, considering yourself low, that's alluded to by the kanaf, by the corner, by putting something by a cornerback. And Korach thought he could do and go through his life by, quote, like cutting corners. I don't need this. I don't have to have any shaykhs to being an onav. So Moshe Rabbeinu answered the question of Korach, and he said, no, beged that's chulei cheles, still, it needs to have tzitzis. It needs to have all the decorations, all the things on the corners, the things that complete a year, the things that actually make a person. You need to be humble and subdued, even if you have all the milas in the world. You're an unbelievable person. You have all the milas, but you can only reach the madrega. You want to be a kohen gadol. You can only reach the madrega of kahuna gedola if you behave with hachnoah v'shiflus. And therefore, you, Korach, said Moshe Rabbeinu, you are not roy for kahuna gedola. The Gemara, Masechta Eruvin, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis says that for 2.5 years, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had a disagreement. For 2.5 years. And what was this disagreement? It's a very famous disagreement. People know about this, both sides of this argument. The disagreement was whether Noach loy la'adam shenivra yoser mishaloi nivra. What would have been better for a person? Is it better for a person to have actually been created in this world and face all the challenges and possibly one day have to answer for deficiencies and things that he did not do correct in his life? Is it better for a person to have been corrected and go through life and try to grow and get to a certain level? Or is it better that you shouldn't have been created at all? Your neshama would have been better had it never come down to this world. So Nesivos Shalom brings down a beautiful teretz, a beautiful thought on this from the Sefer Teshuas Chaim. And he tells us that really both of these things are elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. Both of these ways, shenivra and shaloi nivra, both of them are true. But he explains it with a lesson for this week's parsha. He says, if a person themselves, he feels that he was better off not created. A person's an unav. He feels, no matter what I do in my life, it's never going to really be good enough. We're not discussing now the psychological ramifications of self-esteem and that all goes. But let's say a person feels that, no, whatever I do, I'm not a tzaddik, I'm not anything. He says, if a person feels that they were better off not being created, and they're very humble about it, they're broken, then it's dafka that person who it's good and it's better off that he was created. That is the type of person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a nachas ruach from. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees someone who's humble, and even if he does good things, but okay, quietly, I don't need the pat on the back every second, he keeps himself humble, that's the kind of person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu likes very much. But if a person is very busy with themselves, and their image, and they're not humble, and even if that person is an Oyvad Hashem in many different ways, that is not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And therefore, maybe it's actually better for that person to not have been created. So that's how it works. If you feel that you shouldn't have been created, if you feel that you're not really good enough, and that you're an unav, and you're humble, that's dafka the person, the exact type of a person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants and is happy that that person was created. The Torah says about Aaron HaKohen, the Torah says a lashon of the Aaron Mahu, a lashon of Anivos. Aaron led his wife, Aaron led his entire life like he was not deserving of anything. And that Aaron HaKohen felt that he himself was not roy to do the avodah and to enter the Kodesh Kodashim. So it's dafka Aaron HaKohen, the Aaron Mahu, Aaron who felt at every step, at every juncture, that he was not the person that was really deserving of this. Aaron HaKohen, yes, he had the characteristics precisely for what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. This is what Hashem wants, for a person to feel and be humble. Nesivos Shalom says that we see from here that the real pagam of Korach, what was the real problem? Let's get to the root of the problem. The real problem that Korach had was a problem of geus, of gaiva. And that itself was an extremely chamur thing. Chazal tell us, the Gemara, Masechta Soita, Daf Hey Omar Aleph, very scary Gemara. Gemara says about a Baal Gaiva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ein ani v'hu yicholim lador bo'elam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about a person who's a Baal Gaiva, and this is not said about anything else. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, we, Kaviyachal, Hashem, and this person, we cannot exist in the world together. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so repulsed by a person who is a Baal Gaiva, by a person that blows his own horn the whole day, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what? We can't exist together. It doesn't work. It's not a good relationship. And this is something that's not said about anything else. This is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not want. That it's so bad that these people got lost forever. All Korach and all those people, they were gone, and they were gone forever. A person could be an Oved Hashem, and he could have many milas, but if you're not humble, you're lost. If you're not humble, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not interested. He doesn't want such a person. Hashem wants and He likes people who are humble. As we mention often, and we've said this by many of the shiurim, the Torah is not a storybook. And if the Torah tells us the Parsha of Korach, it's not giving us some story that happened a few thousand years ago, and just to tell us about what's going on with Korach. That's not what the Torah wants. The Torah wants that the lessons of Korach are meant for each and every one of us today. The Torah says. And that's a tzivur l'doros. The Chofetz Chaim talks about this many times, about that things of this nature that the Torah brings out. These are things that we need to learn. These are lessons for us to be humble and to run away from machlokes. I just want to say to finish off, I saw this week in the Chofetz Chaim, the Nesivos Shalom Shiur. It's interesting that the Nesivos Shalom Shiur on this week, I notice it every year. When we get to this point, Nesivos Shalom Shiur, during the week of Parshas Korach, the part of Nesivos Shalom Shiur that we learn is about machlokes. I don't know if the Chofetz Chaim, I don't think the Chofetz Chaim broke it up into days and lesson a day and all those things, but that's the way it works out. And listen to this. Chofetz Chaim says, you have a person, or basically every person, if somebody says something bad about a person's child, inadvertently, mentions off the cuff, you say something about someone else's child, and especially if you say something that that other people find out about, of course you're going to react very, very strongly. That someone should say something bad about your child, and someone should harm your child. You'd go. It's something that you can't tolerate. And a Baal Machlokes would be this way too. The son or the daughter or the child of the Baal Machlokes, you say something about that child, they're going to snap. They can't have it that you should say something that will affect their child adversely or negatively. And the Chofetz Chaim says that he's amazed that that same person could get involved in Machlokes, be a Baal Machlokes, and it's very scary what he says. Chofetz Chaim says that a person willingly gets involved in Machlokes, and due to the Machlokes, he brings unbelievable tzaras to his own children. And the Chofetz Chaim says a person, by getting involved in Machlokes, he can even cause death to his children. Aside from the fact that it causes anios, that people lose their money and lose their everything else in this world, but chas v'shalom, it can cause the worst thing. It can cause very, very bad things. And he says, it's unbelievable. You won't tolerate someone else saying something that might negatively affect your children, but you get involved in machlokes, and you do whatever, and that could destroy your entire family, and destroy your entire life. So we need to learn this lesson of Korach. We need to study this every year, that when it comes to any sort of machlokes, you need to not just walk away, you need to run away, like we run away from a fire. And it's good for you. It'll make your life better. It'll make your life healthier. But most of all, it's what the Torah wants. The Torah does not want us ever to get involved in a machlokes.